First of all, welcome everyone, and thank you for taking the time to attend the third episode of this webinar. I'm sorry for the ones that attended already the two episodes, but I will introduce myself and the webinar shortly before starting. So my name is Diego Bartoli. I work as a data analyst and engineer in the analysis team here at SkillCorner. And the work of my team is basically to be an internal user of our data. So we work with the data the same way that you do. And we have the opportunity to talk and support a lot of different clubs at different stages of their data journey. And the idea of this webinar is a bit to give back the best practices and the best usage that we have seen at clubs at different levels of data maturity. So let's start now with the presentation. Sorry. Okay, perfect. So these are the three stages that we have identified in the previous episodes, and we have went over the simple and medium stage, and the one we will analyze today is the highest stage, the one that we consider the biggest step. So there is, in our opinion, a bigger step between the medium and the high category rather than the medium and simple, both in terms of technology requirements and cost, but also in terms of impact within the club. So what are we talking about in this stage? We are talking in terms of type of data, always about event level data that has to be aggregated to build metrics, but the data is linked to video. So now we are talking about building personalized video-based metrics, not only database metrics. What does this mean in terms of scope? So you can start supporting processes with data. You can support processes as you did before, drive processes with data, but you can start integrating other departments of the club in the process. So other departments, which language is not data. So for example, now you can go to a scout, you can sit with a coach and ask, what do you search in a player? What are the characteristics that for you are important? What do you focus for this position? And you can looking at video together, define the situations that they are more interested in. And then after you have defined the situations together, you can understand how to capture those situations with data and build ad hoc metrics with that. So linking back to scouting, you can now start tackling requests like show us current options in defined markets for the player profile that we define together. So it's important because everyone at the club is aligned on what you are looking for, and it trusts more the data because you have built it together. It also allows you to enter in parts of the workflows, both of scouting and analysis, that before you couldn't touch. So, for example, in the video evaluation, in the scouting workflow, you can now help to build a more specific playlist. So with dynamic events, you can really capture very specific events. We will see it later with a notebook. So, for example, a scout now, instead of watching 100 clips of player possession, can watch like 25 clips of players' possessions that start with a difficult reception. So these kind of things. So also in the video evaluation, you can start using the data to help scouts save time. So for the infrastructure that is needed for this kind of setup, you have more costs, because apart from the cost of data and code in the cloud, you also have the cost for storing and processing the video. And you likely start to need a data team to support this kind of infrastructure, so definitely more than two people. Let's go quickly over the infrastructure details for this kind of setup. So in terms of code and data, we are always talking about, as we said the other day for the menu setup, so storing in the cloud. The difference that we introduce here, that again, as we always said in the previous episodes as well, these steps in the reality can be mixed, but it's for the sake of the presentation, we classify them this way. So the cloud scripts in this setup, we say that are orchestrated to run sequentially. So they are not just scheduled, but there's an order, and you make sure that the order is always respected through different tools, like can it be Databricks, can it be Google Workflows, that allow you to run one step after the other. The data is stored in the cloud and is connected to a web app. So another step up compared to the Medium setup. So instead of having BI tools, we have a web app that is much easier to use for any user. And the video is also stored in the cloud, or you have access to an API to retrieve the video. Advantages and disadvantages. Of course, the big disadvantage is the cost. So for cloud storage, database, video, and also hosting the application. But the setup is automated, is flexible, should suit with no problem a high number of competitions, and has a very good usability with the web app. And then there's all the advantages of linking the data to video that we just mentioned. In terms of data logical flow, this, for the ones that attended also the previous episode or look at the recording, this is exactly the same data logical flow that we had the last time with one small change. So we identify new games, then we retrieve the data, we store the data, and we aggregate the data. So the data at match event level, then we aggregate in competition edition player or the level of aggregation that you need. As we mentioned the other time, this step is complex and multi-step, but for the sake of the presentation, we group it in one step only. Where is the difference? Is here. So store event level data as well in the database. So you also need to store basically the dynamic events in the database. So you need to access through the database also the event level data. Why? Because this is the data that is linked to video. What you watch on video are the events. Then we will see how to sync and we will go more in detail in the process also with a notebook. But this is basically like the data that you will sync to video. So you need to store event level data as well. How does the syncing with video work? So we just mentioned it. We need a dynamic events database. So basically accessing the database to the data at event level. And we need a video storage or an API. Usually the retrieval like is at match level. So here you can access the videos for the matches. Then there's the syncing process that we will see in detail in a moment. And then after the syncing process, you can either watch directly the playlist that you created, so watch it on local, or best, you can serve a tool where you can see the video. This is a screenshot of a tool that we have internally at SkillCorner. How does this work? Basically, we have a first phase using our dynamic events database where you can interact dynamically through these filters with the dynamic events database. So basically, these are the attributes that you have in the dynamic events, and you can filter. So you can say channel start, half space right, center left, the direction, what type of event. So you filter, you get to a list of events, and then you generate the clips. So basically, you retrieve the video for the matches of this event, and then you extract the clips you are interested in, and here you can see the playlist of the events you captured. So this is in general how it works, the processing, and then with the notebook we will go in detail in the syncing. Broadly, this is an optimal setup to develop new metrics. Why? Because from a list of metrics, so what you see on the left, basically here we are defining some metrics. So start file recovery press, we put some filters that for us define the start file recovery press kind of action. And we can easily check two things. First, on video, so if the action actually makes football sense, so it is what we are capturing, what we have in mind. And then the second one, we can easily check the data. So having a dynamic events database, we can build ad hoc metrics on selected leaks. And what is the check that we usually run? So when you build a metrics, you kind of have in mind some players that do it a lot. So basically, you check first if the numbers make sense. So if it's good cardinality and this kind of stuff, this is actually significant. And then if the names that appear here make sense to you. So after these two validations, video and data, you can be sure that you build a meaningful and useful metric, and it's ad hoc and video based. So you can have, as we said before, you don't need to build it only based on your data knowledge as we did in the previous episode. Perfect. So this is in general talking about the dynamic events syncing with video and what are the advantages. We will go over now a bit more in detail the syncing process. So how do you actually sync dynamic events with video? And then we will see a few examples. So what do you need? You need, of course, a SkillCorner API to fetch dynamic events and here I call it a playable URL, but basically you need what we said before, a video API or a video storage, somewhere where you have the video and you can store it. How does it work? So each dynamic event, so each row of the dynamic event file carries a frame start and a frame end. We process the data at 10 frames per second, but basically the idea is that from a frame start, you can obtain a second. And basically, if you want to watch an event, what you need to do is convert those frames into seconds and then go into the video and look at the second start, second end, and you will see the event that you are referencing to. So basically, from frame, you convert to seconds and you clip the video. That's in general how it works. So what do we do here? Again, like as we said before, here that we are facing, as we had said in the last episode, here we're facing a bit more difficult scenario. So this notebook is an example and it works on single matches basis, but the procedure is the same on scale. So the syncing works the same if you need to build a tool, for example, for scouting, where you, of course, need to access a lot of different matches. So here I use a concrete match ID. I create a directory where I will put the clips, but it's not very important. Okay, so here is where you need to put your video client. So I'm using here the one that we have a SkillCorner, but of course it won't work for you. But basically here I retrieve the video for one match. So I give the match ID and I can retrieve the video for that match. Then I fetch the dynamic events via the API. So what we just said, I retrieve the dynamic events for that match. And this is the, let's say, most important part. So how does the syncing work? Because as we said before, we have for each dynamic event a frame start and a frame end. And knowing that the SkillCorner data is processed at 10 frames per second, we convert frame start to seconds and we clip the video. What is the different scenario here? That our frames are referenced to the video the data was processed on. But of course, you can have a video source where the video is different from the one we obtained the data from. So, for example, if you have tactical video, usually there's no break between the half times. So you have also during the halftime, you can see the pitch and it's different from broadcast. So what do you do? Basically, you need to give a first half offset second and second half offset second. This is basically the second time in your video that the first half starts and the second half starts. So that way you can sync the seconds from your video with the seconds of the video where the data from SkillCorner was processed on, and you can actually use the dynamic events on a different video, just doing this very simple calculation. These are very technical details that maybe to some people are not interesting, but to the people that then have to write the code to sync the video might be helpful. So this is how you do it. Basically, of course, here the video I'm using is the one we obtained the data from, so I don't need to put any of these two parameters. Here is just the code. You can go over it as the other times, both the presentation and the code will be shared. So you can go over this. And basically at the end, this method in particular, it creates a playlist that you can watch. And now we will watch some playlists together. If you have to serve a tool, the procedure is the same, but instead of creating a playlist in a directory, you create it to be played in a tool, in a Streamlit, a web app, whatever you have. Okay, so these were all the, let's say, boring technical details. Let's see some examples. First, very simple one. We won't watch the clip for this because it's very easy. Say I want to see all the runs in behind in the match. So this was a friendly between Al Ittihad and Sevilla. We are showing this because of video rights. So you just select all the runs in behind. You obtain here, I'm just doing a count to see the players that did it the most. Then using the event IDs, so basically the event IDs were event type of run and the event subtype behind, I create clips. So the clips are created locally here. And for example, okay, let's watch it very fast. You create a clip and you can see here the different runnings in behind during the match. But as said, this is a very simple example. It's not very interesting maybe to watch all the runs in behind of a match. let's see a different, more interesting example. So I tried to put here an example that is more tactical, an example that is more for scouting also in data terms, so in terms of building a metric that is actually meaningful for data, and then one that is mostly for video. So just a situation that I believe can be interesting for scouts to look on video, but maybe not on data, but still is useful for them to watch. So playing out of pressure, this is my opinion, a metric that can be interesting to look both from video and data perspective. So actually looking at data and looking along a season what are the players that do it the most. We call it playing out of pressure. So basically is a player possession that starts in at least medium pressure or receiving from a teammate that is at least in medium pressure and finds a teammate or carries to significantly less pressures. So it's capturing different type of actions that can be forward, backward, but what we are evaluating here is the ability of the player to move the ball from a high pressure point to a low pressure point. So kind of that ability, yeah, to move the play. Um, this is done linking possessions. It was a question in the second episode. How can you link possessions? How do you do it? Is the setup we saw good for this? So here you have an example of how to link possessions. You can go over it, but basically what we use is the phase index and the player possession within phase index. So we list the phase along a match and then the possessions within each phase. So it can be interesting also for you to see this kind of example. And as we did before, like we count the players that did the most along the match, and then we generate clips. So here we generated clips for Saul Niguez, and we can watch the clips of Saul. So as said, like then you create an HTML playlist and you see these actions. So we will see Saul now receiving under pressure and just moving the pressure to, yeah, moving the ball to a lower point. You will see that most of these passes in this case are backward. Another filter you can enter if you are interested in that is forward passes with lowering the pressure. They will have less occurrences, but it can be interesting. Here, as we said, we're just measuring the ability to move the play from high pressure to low pressure. So yeah, these kind of actions. We can watch a few clips more and then we change. So we see two times in the same action. Okay, perfect. We can now go to another example. So dealing with a technically difficult ball. Okay, so this is the kind of metric that I envision that maybe on a data level is not super interesting, but it can be interesting to watch on video. Um, So what are we using here? Reception difficulty at start. So this is one of the sub-models that we use to build our pressure, but it's available as well as data, so you can actually use it. And it measures basically the technical difficulty to control a ball. So it's often bouncing balls, high balls, these kind of things. So again, like on data it's difficult maybe to look at this, but on video it can be interesting because you can see how the player technically is looking and focusing on situations where technicality is actually required, not looking in general at possessions. Um, so I received the indication that unfortunately the clips are a bit choppy on the stream, but so yeah, I'm sorry for that. Maybe we can share them the same after. We can just look, yeah, very quickly the one that we have generated for this player. So I think here, if I'm not mistaken, was Luis Felipe. So yeah, let's watch just a few, just hopefully it can give you at least an idea of what we are talking about. Otherwise, I think that we can share this kind of, yeah, so you see like this kind of bouncing balls, you can evaluate here, like he didn't complete the pass. And yeah, it can be interesting to look at video. Let's look just one more. So yeah, again, a high bouncing ball, these kind of situations. Okay, so then another one, that one we can just maybe say how we define the metric and skip the clip. So this is just looking at the dribbles. So basically we have the beaten by possession flag that basically spots in our on-ball engagements. So when a player engages the player with the ball and is beaten with the possession. So basically, the player with the ball at feet can overcome the engagement. So inverting this, you can look at players that beat with possession the opponents. So here, that's what we do. So you have another example of a different way to build a metric with the dynamic events. We look at the players that did it the most, and again, we create the clips here for the player. Okay, we don't look at these clips and we go to the last example. So the third main combination. So this is more tactical, purely tactical, doesn't have a lot of maybe applications possible for scouting. But I don't know if you have to insert like dynamic events in the opposition analysis workflow or pre or post match. This can be interesting to give the possibility to clip this kind of situations and to see if a team does this kind of actions often or not. How do we spot these situations in our data? So again, we link possessions, in this case, 3 possessions. And what we say is basically that the first possession has to be a forward pass with one opponent, at least one opponent bypassed, or a line break, so forward pass. The second one, the second touch has to be a not forward pass, and it has to be a quick pass or a one touch. And the third one has to be a reception with we are using here again. We are using here the submodel time to impact of the pressure that basically tells you if there's an opponent close by or not. So we are looking at the situation where the first pass is forward, the second is backward, and the third guy receives with the front to the goal and time to play. So we look at these kind of situations. We see that Al Ittihad did it much more during the game. And again, we spot these situations and we build the clips. Here, of course, we build the clips at team level. Yeah, again, I hope that you can see something just to give you an idea of the kind of third main combinations that we are spotting. So, for example, here, pam, pam, the third one receives with time to receive, with time to play. We see another one that is a classic one. So, a center back no, if goalkeeper number 6, a center back, and then the center back receives and can play forward. So yeah, hopefully you see something and then give you an idea. So yeah, this notebook will be shared with you. Again, it's not a working solution, but it gives you the code to sync dynamic events with different video sources and video providers. And yeah, like this has been for today. I hope that it gave you an idea of the challenges, but also the impact of linking dynamic events with video, linking data with video. We really believe that, again, as we said at the beginning of the presentation, the step is huge. It's bigger between the high and medium than the medium and low, but the impact is also much bigger. And it's definitely very important if you want to complete that data journey. Yeah, I hope it was useful. I don't know if there are any questions, and also, again, the presentation and the notebook will be shared. Okay, I see there is a question in the chat. How do you manage video synchronization on scale? You will need to sync kickoff times for every match. Yeah, basically here it's a good question. Like we did it for one match because we were working just on one match. Every video provider, every API provider that for video for every match gives the video and then the kickoff times, first and second half, because this synchronization challenge is common and the solution is common. So every good video provider via API knows that that is an information that you likely need to sync video with different data sources. So for every match, you have that information. So if you can access that information via API, you can make the synchronization programmatically for every match with no challenge. Okay, I think there are no more questions. So yeah, thank you everyone for attending this and the previous episodes. Hopefully it was useful. Any questions that you might have, you can reach out to SkillCorner. You can reach out to me, and we will be happy to to help in any way, yeah, thank you again for attending, and I hope this was useful for everyone. We will be sending a small survey after the webinar for us to know if you like the content, if you missed something, and in general, opinion on the topic. So it would be very important for us if you can take the time to reply. Thank you very much.